From Carl pulling the trigger on his own future to the moment a barn door opens and half a season of hope walks out on dead legs. These are the deaths, ranked by how they happened, and somehow the way they died hurts more than the fact that they did. 10. Spencer Monroe. Spencer never earns his death. That's what makes it so precise. He walks up to Negan with a bottle of good scotch and a speech about why he'd make a better leader than Rick and Negan actually listens.
People contribute for the greater good. Makes sense. But you should know that Rick Grimes has a history of not working well with others.
He leans in. He considers it. And then he asks the question that ends everything. Whether Spencer has guts. Spencer says yes. Negan decides to find out for himself, right there in the street.
Why not just kill Rick yourself and just take over?
What? No, I don't...
You know what I'm thinking? Because I have a guess.
Spencer looks down. He doesn't understand what's happening until it's already done. The Alexandrians freeze. Nobody moves because there's nothing to move toward. It's over in seconds. And the grotesque theatricality of it makes it impossible to look away. Layer 1 and 2. But what this death actually does is clarify the show's entire thesis on cowardice. Spencer spent seasons undermining Rick behind closed doors. Negan kills him in the open. The show doesn't frame that as justice. It frames it as the difference between two kinds of cruelty and asks you to decide which one is worse.
Embarrassing. There they are. They were inside you the whole time. You did have guts. I've never been so wrong in my whole life.
Layer 3. Spencer's death ranks here because the how is almost satirical. He came prepared for a negotiation and got an anatomy lesson instead. Everything above this is personal. But while Spencer's death was about what he chose to do, the next one is about a man who had no choice at all and got the worst death the show could design for someone that gentle. 9. Dale Horvath. Dale is the show's conscience, which is exactly why what happens to him feels like the series' punishing optimism. He's alone in a field at night, no threat, no confrontation, just a quiet walk when a walker that Carl failed to deal with earlier catches him from behind.
Okay, Carl.
Baby, what happened? Come here.
There's no build-up, no dramatic last stand. He goes down in the dirt, far from everyone, and by the time the group reaches him, there's nothing left to save.
Go.
What was that? What happened? What happened?
I don't know, go!
Rick raises his gun. He can't do it. Daryl takes it from him and does what needs doing. The group stands there, and none of them speak. Because every single one of them knows that Carl's earlier carelessness is the reason they're standing in that field right now. And the show loses something permanent when Dale goes a voice that kept asking whether surviving was worth it if it cost you who you were. After this episode, that question stops getting asked out loud. The series never really replaces him. What makes Dale's death rank here isn't the gore, it's the randomness threaded through with indirect consequence. He dies because a kid didn't finish something. The cruelty isn't Negan or the governor, it's a loose end. The moral weight isn't complicated. Dale deserved a better death than this show gave him. That's not a criticism, that's exactly the point. This ranks at 9 because, as unfair as it is, Dale's death is ultimately about failure by omission. What comes next is about something the show built deliberately and then destroyed on purpose. 8. Merle Dixon. Merle Dixon spends the entire series being the wrong kind of survivor, and then, just once, he tries to be the right kind. He drives alone to where the governor is camped. He has a plan, a bottle of whiskey, and no backup. He takes out several of the governor's men before he's caught. And when the governor finds him, Merle doesn't beg. He doesn't negotiate. He just keeps going until he can't. The governor beats him down, shoots him, and leaves him. Layer 1. Daryl finds him turned. Not dead turned. And he has to put down the reanimated version of his brother with his own hands in a field while falling apart completely. Norman Reedus doesn't say a single word in that scene. He doesn't have to. Layer 2. Merle's entire arc, the racism, the cruelty, the self-destruction, gets reframed by the way he dies. He goes out trying to protect the group that never fully accepted him, and nobody gets to thank him for it. Not even Daryl gets that. The show makes sure of it. Three. And then Daryl says the line that lands like a door closing. I don't want to see you like this. Merle ranks here because his death is the show's most complete character reframe. Everything you thought about him gets rewritten in a single sequence. But it's not the most devastating loss of a Dixon-level character. That one's still coming. 7. Shane Walsh. Shane doesn't die a villain. That's the most unsettling thing about it. He lures Rick out to a field at night with a story about a walker threat, and Rick already knows what's happening before they get there.
Raise your gun. You're gonna have to kill an unarmed man.
They both do. Shane has his hand on his gun the whole walk out. Rick keeps his at his side. And when Shane finally draws, Rick drives a knife into him before the gun clears the holster. Shane falls. Rick stands over him. Neither of them says anything for a long moment. Layer 1. And then, Carl shoots his reanimated father figure in the head from 20 feet away, not out of panic, but with full understanding of what he's doing. Afterward is the moment the show's central coming-of-age story turns permanently dark. Layer 2. Shane was wrong about almost everything, but he was right that Rick's way of leading the moral hesitation, the constant negotiation with his own conscience, would cost people their lives. The show spends the next 6 seasons proving him correct. He just didn't live to see it. Layer 3. Shane ranks here because his death is a referendum on the show's moral compass, and the verdict isn't clean. Rick survives. Shane doesn't. And the audience isn't entirely sure that was the right outcome, but that death changed one character more than any other, and that character isn't Rick. It's the 12-year-old who pulled the trigger. 6. Beth Green. Beth's death isn't dramatic. That's the entire problem. She's inside Grady Memorial, in the middle of a tense exchange. Dawn has just agreed to release the prisoners. The group is walking out, and Beth pulls a pair of scissors from her sling and drives them into Dawn's shoulder.
I get it now.
It's not a killing blow. It's not meant to be. It's a statement. Dawn's gun fires on reflex. Beth is gone before anyone processes the sound. Layer 1. Daryl catches her. He carries her out of that hospital with his face completely destroyed. And the group. The group that fought their way across Atlanta to get her back stands on the steps and watches him walk out, carrying something that isn't Beth anymore. Maggie collapses. Layer 2. What makes Beth's death the cruelest accident in the series is that it didn't have to happen. Dawn didn't mean to kill her. Beth didn't mean to die. Two people made two decisions in 2 seconds, and a character the show had spent 2 seasons finally developing into something worth watching is gone. The waste of it is the whole point. Layer 3. The moral frame here is devastating in its simplicity. Beth died making a point that no one was left to hear. That's not tragedy. That's futility. And the show never apologizes for it. This ranks at 6 because the how is defined entirely by accident. Everything above this is defined by intent. Someone decided these people would die this way, and that deliberateness is what makes it unbearable. 5. Herschel Green. There is no death in this series more deliberately cruel than Herschel's, and the show knows exactly what it's doing. The governor has him on his knees at the prison fence. Rick is across the field, actually negotiating making real concessions, talking about sharing the space, trying to find a way through.
I'm back. I know. We all can change.
Herschel listens. He almost smiles. For a moment, it looks like Rick's way might actually work. The governor looks at Herschel, looks at Michonne's katana in his hand, and swings it anyway. Layer 1. Maggie and Beth scream from inside the fence. Rick watches from 30 yards away, completely powerless, and something in him, the part that still believed diplomacy was possible, dies in that field alongside Herschel. The prison falls that same day. Layer 2. But what this moment permanently destroys isn't just a character, it's the show's central argument that civilization can be rebuilt through patience and decency. Herschel was that argument made flesh. His farm, his recovery, his faith, his willingness to believe in people, all of it ends on its knees in the mud. The show was never the same after this. Layer 3. And then the governor says the word that makes the swing inevitable, not a threat, not a speech, just liar. This is where the series crossed a line it couldn't come back from. Herschel didn't die in spite of Rick's hope he died because of it. And that's the cruelest thing the writing ever did to its own premise. If one of the moments you were expecting hasn't shown up yet, don't worry. Because this is where the list stops being shocking and starts being permanent. And if you're a Walking Dead fan who remembers where you were when these moments aired, make sure you're subscribed, because the top entries on this list are the ones that changed everything. 4. Lori Grimes. Lori doesn't get a goodbye. That's the wound the show never lets heal. She's in the prison boiler room, in labor, with Maggie and Carl, and something goes wrong. There's no doctor anymore. There's no med bay. There's a teenager with a knife and a decision that no one in that room should ever have to make.
Mom, look at me. Look at me. Keep your eyes open.
We have to get you back to Dad.
Maggie tells her what has to happen. Lori already knows. She looks at Carl. She says everything she needs to say in about 30 seconds. And then she tells Maggie to do it. Layer 1. Carl insists on being the one to prevent her from turning. Maggie tries to stop him. He doesn't let her. He walks back into that room alone, and the show cuts away, and the single gunshot that follows is one of the most devastating sounds. in the entire series.
Go pull him out.
Layer 2. What this death does to Carl is permanent and irreversible. He doesn't just lose his mother, he becomes the person who ended her. He carries that into every single scene for the rest of his arc, and it quietly explains everything about who he becomes. The show never lets him put that weight down. Fans never forgot this moment. Layer 3. Lori ranks here because the how is layered with impossible choices made by people who had no good options. Every other death on this list has a villain. This one just has circumstance and a 12-year-old who had to grow up in a single gunshot. This changed everything. But the 3 entries above this one are the ones where the show didn't just take characters, it took pieces of the audience with them. 3. Carl Grimes. Carl Grimes was supposed to survive. That was the contract. He reveals the bite quietly, no dramatic collapse, no walker attack mid-scene. He shows Rick and Michonne what's already done, in the sewers beneath Alexandria, and the way Andrew Lincoln's face breaks in that moment is not acting that can be taught. Rick doesn't speak. He just folds. Michonne reaches for Carl and then stops herself because there's nothing to reach for. Carl has already made his peace. He's the calmest person in that tunnel. Layer 1. He writes letters. He says his goodbyes with intention and clarity to Judith, to Rick, to Michonne, and when the time comes, he insists on doing it himself. He doesn't let Rick be the one. He takes that from his father as a final act of protection. The gunshot comes from inside the room, and Rick sits on the other side of the wall and doesn't move. Layer 2. This is where the series crossed a line it couldn't come back from. Carl wasn't just a character, he was the show's entire argument for the future. Every brutal decision Rick ever made was justified by the world Carl was going to inherit. When Carl dies, that justification dies with him. The show loses its reason for its own brutality, and it never fully recovers a sense of purpose after this moment. Fans never forgot this moment, because it didn't just end Carl, it ended what the show was trying to be. Layer 3. The moral framing is the hardest part. Carl got bitten helping a stranger, the exact behavior Rick's entire philosophy was designed to protect. He died doing the right thing. The show makes no apologies for that irony. It just lets it sit there. This ranks at 3 because Carl's death is the most thematically catastrophic loss in the series. But the 2 entries above it are the ones where the how didn't just hurt it permanently, redefined what this show was willing to do to its audience. 2. Glenn Rhee. Everything about Glenn's death is designed to be as long and as witnessed as possible. That's the point. That's the punishment. Negan picks him second after Abraham, after the group has already absorbed 1 loss and almost settled into survival mode.
Okay, Dad. Taking it like a champ.
Glenn tries to get up. His eye is swollen shut. He turns to Maggie and says the line that breaks the entire scene open, not a goodbye, not a declaration, just a promise about finding her somehow, and Negan doesn't let him finish. The beating doesn't stop quickly. The show doesn't cut away. Layer 1. Maggie watches every second of it. The group watches every second of it. That's not an accident. Negan needs witnesses, needs the memory to be installed in every person kneeling in that lineup. He gets exactly what he came for. Layer 2. Glenn's death didn't just shock fans. It permanently broke the unspoken rule that likability was a form of protection. He was the moral center of the group. He was the one who still believed people were worth saving. He survived things he had no right to survive, for seasons, and the audience built a kind of faith around that. Negan doesn't just kill Glenn. He kills the audience's faith in the show's willingness to protect who we love. The show was never the same after this. Layer 3. And then Glenn looks at Maggie and says the words that make the whole thing unbearable. Maggie, I'll find you. Glenn ranks at 2 because his death is the most viscerally traumatic in the series. But the entry above it doesn't traumatize with violence. It traumatizes with something the show spent half a season making you believe in and then takes away with a single barn door. 1. Sophia Chambly. The show spends 7 episodes making you search for her. That's the whole trick. She runs into the woods in the season 2 premiere, and the entire first half of the season becomes a manhunt. Every episode, every conversation, every detour through Herschel's farm is threaded with the possibility that she's still out there, still alive, still findable. The audience holds on to that because the show lets them. It never closes the door. It just keeps the search going long enough for hope to become a kind of certainty. And then, Herschel's barn doors open. Layer 1. The walkers file out one by one, and the group puts them down, and then, she's there. Small, pale, dead eyes, still wearing the same clothes. Carol makes a sound that doesn't sound human and can't move, and Rick is already walking forward because someone has to and nobody else can. The gun comes up. The show holds on Carol's face for just a moment too long. Layer 2. And then the shot. What this moment does to the series is irreversible. Sophia wasn't a major character, she was a promise. The promise that the show would protect its children, that survival was possible for the innocent, that hope directed at something small and specific could be rewarded. The barn doors don't just open on a turned little girl, they open on every assumption the audience was still carrying about what kind of show this was. Fans never forgot this moment. This changed everything. The show was never the same after this. Not in tone, not in trust, not in what it was willing to take from you without warning. Layer 3. And the cruelest detail. The one that makes rewatches genuinely hard to sit through is that she was in that barn the whole time. While the group was searching the woods, knocking on farmhouse doors, risking their lives in every direction, she was already gone. The search was already over before it started. The hope was always pointed at nothing. The moral frame is the show's darkest statement. Hope isn't just fragile in this world, it's dangerous. Sophia didn't survive because she was a child. She didn't survive because people loved her. She didn't survive because Rick Grimes was looking for her. She turned in a barn while the people who cared about her most were 30 yards away, and nobody knew. This didn't just end Sophia, it ended the show's relationship with innocence entirely. Sophia ranks first not because her death is the most violent, it isn't. Not because it's the most personal, others come close. She ranks first because of the how, a half season of manufactured hope, collapsed in silence, in front of everyone, with a barn door as the punchline. No villain planned it, no dramatic confrontation built to it. Just a door, just a child. Just the sound of what the world actually is underneath everything the survivors are still pretending. That barn door didn't just close on Sophia, it closed on every version of this show that still believed searching was worth it. These were the deaths ranked by how they happened, and how they happened is why they still hurt. Which death hit differently on the rewatch than it did the first time? Did we miss one? Drop it below and we might build the next video around it. Subscribe if you're not done processing what this show did to you. Click here to watch Most Unforgivable Betrayals in The Walking Dead. It hits just as hard.